Well, welcome everyone to TEC Canada's Deeper Insights webinar series. My name is Ruth Ann Marley, and as always, it is my pleasure to host this program. Today, we have a very special guest with us today, Darrin Mitchell. And Darrin is the president of Mitchell Industries, which is one reason I brought him on to talk to you today. But he's come up with a really innovative solution for a lot of problems, and I wanted him to share those with you today. Darrin has been in the manufacturing business and owned a global manufacturing business for over 20 years. And so his acumen and his experience and a few bumps and bruises along the way has brought him to this place today to share with us. I'm going to encourage everyone, please type in your comments, your questions. We'll make some time throughout the presentation to answer those. For all of you joining us on live, we are feeding those in too. So please, let's make this as interactive as possible. And right now, I'm going to turn it over to you, Darrin. Welcome.
Awesome. Thanks, Ruth Ann. It's very nice to be here, and I appreciate the invite. And I appreciate everybody who is on this this session right now. I know we only have, let's say, 45 minutes together, but I really want to make sure that in the time that we spend together, I give you some insights to help you think about where your business is today and where you're going. And I also hope that I can give you a couple tactical tools that you can start using and implementing today. So the first time I did this presentation was back in 2020. And that particular rail train right there, I actually had cargo on that train for my manufacturing business. I didn't realize it at the time, but it had come across the ocean. It had landed on a port on the West Coast, and it had obviously been held up for obvious reasons. But what my concern was is I was watching my min-maxes, and I was watching that level of inventory being depleted. And luckily, that was the last time I had to use a slide like that when I was doing my presentations. Oh, until this one. So this was the next headline that came up. And I went, okay, maybe this is going to be the end of it. We've had some ripple effects in our supply chains. And then we had this one. And I was actually working with some of my suppliers to make sure that we had enough nitrile gloves to keep our employees safe in the factory. So you're getting a little heavy at this point in time, and you're thinking, I never used to think about Malaysia a lot. I never used to think about US ports. I never used to think about, the Port of Vancouver. I never used to think about the rail system across Canada or the United States, but for some reason, it's definitely got my attention. And I couldn't even limit it, the thought process to North America, because you start thinking about things like this that are affecting your supplies, and it just keeps on going. And every time you would try and figure something out, you had the next event that you had to deal with. And I think especially over the last couple of years, this kind of stuff gets heavy on all of us. And you keep thinking, my business exists in a little box, and I have my little box all figured out, and the world just keeps on throwing me curveballs, and I'm continually having to adjust to the big things, the big worldwide things that I have to deal with, but I'm also having to adjust the effects that it has for my business and the employees and the customers and the systems that we developed. And it just keeps on going, absolutely nonstop. It's an onslaught. It is heavy on the shoulders of all business leaders that are out there today. It is this massive form of disruption that, if you think about it, in the last financial crisis we had massive government movements, centralized movements that were taking action immediately to fix the economy. When we had this massive supply chain disruption that we're dealing with, there is no central government that is taking tactical action to fix the supply chain. The best that we're kind of hoping for today is maybe we can wait this out. But you and I both know, as business leaders, people who are paid to make a difference within their company, you don't get paid to wait things out. So a really scary slide right there, even your warehousing that you're looking at, all of the leasing that's ending. So the warehouses, when all of this started, were operating at 93 to 96% occupancy or efficiency. So there wasn't a lot of wiggle room left within the warehouses. Now, when the leases are coming up in the warehouses, they're looking at 25% jumps. And we all know who's going to pay for that. And then there's today. So what we're dealing with is very high level things you already know. You're dealing with COVID, which closed the port city in Vietnam. So the factories in the areas closed because while we were getting vaccinated in North America, the employees at the factories and where some of us were getting our supplies, they were only at 8 and 9% vaccination rates. So even getting those supplies over to where we need them, and of course closing ports, closing freight lines, closing warehouses along the way. The other thing that we faced is the online absolute explosion of shopping, which completely hijacked the supply chain. You'll see in one of the other slides, consumer goods up 24% in the last 24 months in the US alone. That is a major draw on the supply chain that's having effects on that, even the logistics that we were utilizing comfortably 2 and 3 years ago. And the last one is just-in-time perfection. And this is something that we're probably going to spend a little more time on today, is the notion that, are you trying to win by making everything perfect, or are you trying to design a system that is agile, that you can move with the ebb and flow as we go forward? And that's going to be a tough call that many of you have to make in your own businesses. So complete, absolute hard stop. Everything I've told you so far, you know it. You've seen the news, you get the texts, you felt the impacts, your family tells you when you see them, you get that continual information being fed back to you. So I always use an analogy in business that it is 5 o'clock, the sun is going down, it's getting cold, and you happen to find yourself alone in the woods, and you're lost, and you don't know where to go. And I use this analogy to say that some people, when I ask that question of them, their response would be, how did I end up in the woods? And I said, I don't know. Let's just pretend you ended up in the woods. It's 5 o'clock, the sun's going down, you're lost, and help isn't coming. Some people would say, that's not fair. Some people would say, give me a detailed analysis of where I am, and I'll tell you how to get out of the woods. Well, guess what? You don't have one. The people who I think are on this meeting today, and the people who are involved in tech, and I've been a tech member myself for the last couple of years, you aren't paid, and I'm sorry to tell you this, you aren't paid to discuss what has already happened. You get paid for results. You get paid to move the needle forward. And you have a group of people around you today who are waiting for your response to say, I get there's lots of big, scary stuff going on out there. Tell us what we can do to move the needle forward. Tell us what we can do to create progress so we can get to the next step. And again, I think the people on this call today are looking for those tactical solutions so we don't get caught up in the news headlines. So we don't get up blaming politics, blaming international tariffs. You can't afford to have those excuses in your business. I completely agree. It is an absolute onslaught of disruption and terror that has been unleashed on us as business people dealing with our supply chain. But the fact of the matter is we get paid to move things forward. So today, what I'd like to do is make that assumption. We know we're lost in the woods. We know it's 5 o'clock. We know the sun's going down and it's about to get cold. And we know help's not coming. But we're the ones who get paid to make a difference. And really quick shout out to everybody who has been involved and is still involved in TEC, a great organization. It actually helped me realize as a business leader, I may not have been alone completely by myself in the woods. There's lots of other good leaders out there who you can talk to from time to time, who can help give you ideas of how to move forward. And a great organization like TEC is what a great connector to talk to some of those other business leaders and find out their creative ideas. So how did this all begin? Nice little map of Canada here. A little bit about me. Started a manufacturing business in a place in 2000, in a place where there should not be manufacturing. And if you understand how the supply chains work in North America, to have a supply chain or a manufacturing business on an island in the middle of nowhere for business sake, it's a lovely place to live. But to start a manufacturing business in basically the middle of nowhere, Business 101 tells us we should not have started a manufacturing business here. And the reason why is I would go and meet with my competitors in places like Ohio. And my competitors would say, I don't mind sharing stuff with you, Darrin, because you're very small and insignificant, and we are very big and powerful. And I would agree with them. And I would say, tell me what I need to know. Now that we don't have this threat between us, tell me what I need to know. And they would tell me that they were comfortable. And again, I'm a manufacturer, so a lot of this is going to be manufacturing related. They would tell me that they were comfortable with 5 to 9% margins. And I knew literally having a manufacturing business on an island on the east coast of Canada, I could never compete against another manufacturer who had millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in CapEx spending, and they were physically on those supply chain lines, and they could literally do business with a company next door. They were vertically integrated. They were horizontally integrated. I would buy extruded aluminum. They owned the extrusion company. So I knew from day one, we literally were behind the 8 ball, and we could not compete, especially on supply chain, to do what those other companies were doing, because literally getting the supplies to my factories, I knew I had already lost margin compared to my competitors. So starting back in 2000, we had to start thinking about how do we redesign the business and how do we redesign the supply chain to make it work for us. So again, building big pieces of industrial highway equipment. We would build in 2 factories on PEI. We would send these products all over North America, all over the world. And really good example, just to get that 1 unit from Prince Edward Island to British Columbia would be $13,000. So you better believe we had to be extremely creative in our innovation, our development, and our supply chain to make sure that we were doing that in a profitable way for us and in a profitable way for our customer, that they seen that value. So again, getting that material to the factory, getting the product back out, we had to be extremely creative. So today what I want to talk about, and these should be your, again, we only have an hour for some deep insights. What I'd like to talk about today is what's in my control so that we can better our situation today. What are some of the best practices that I can outpace my industry? Because we always know when there's tension in an industry, there's opportunity for some to take that advantage of that and make successes for themselves. And the last thing on the list is, and they're all number ones, the last one on the list is what's creeping in the woods. So if we're lost in the woods, what's creeping in the woods that we should be aware of that's coming down the pipeline in the future. So the first thing I want you to be aware of is, are you supporting your supply chain purchasing, inventory, logistics teams appropriately? And what I mean by that is, let's assume that in your business today that you have Mary, and Mary is your supply chain department. So Mary may be, depending on your the complexity of your business, depending on the scale of your business, Mary is in charge of your supply chain. She may be a one-person show. She may have many people that work for her. What you need to be aware of as a leader today is the unreal stress that is weighted on Mary's shoulders. There are a million details today that Mary has to deal with that you may not be seeing all of those details at your leadership table. So everything from demand management to, and it's absolutely crazy. It goes on, and especially the poor thing having to deal with the change orders that are coming through. Well, we're currently 7 months out, so we did find the things we needed for 7 months from now. Mary did a great job of getting the supplies we need, and all of a sudden that order got canceled because 7 months wasn't good enough for the customer. They found somebody in 4 months, so now we're dealing with all of those change orders as well. And take a good look at Mary. She's smiling, she's polite, but I'm pretty sure she's already pulled some of her hair out. It's very frustrating for Mary right now. And on top of that, she's probably involved in quoting things that she's never quoted before. She's probably involved in staff turnover that she wasn't used to, and she's holding down that fort. So again, whether it's a team of people or an individual, I'm just trying to put a face to this. You need to start giving Mary the attention that she deserves because it's such a critical part of your business. What you're not allowed to do is say, I am so tired of hearing bad news, only come back and see me when you have good news, Mary. So what are the critical questions you need to ask yourself today about how can you support Mary or Mary's team? One you need to ask yourself is, do you have the right leadership in your supply chain management team? And again, many of us who have grown our businesses over the years, you may actually have to stop and reflect. Although Mary is just an absolute superhuman being, you may have to stop and reflect and say, does Mary have the skill set that we need as a business and where we're at today? And if we don't have that, that's the first thing that you need to do, is take an assessment of that. I know it's a hard thing to do, but guess what? This is what we get paid to do as leaders. And secondly, does Mary have the right team behind her? So I've seen a lot of supply chain professionals today. They keep putting things in the backpack and saying, let me solve it, let me solve it, let me solve it. But again, you're going to burn out some of your best people. And if you care for Mary and she is the person for your business, you need to make sure that she has the right team behind her instead of her trying to bear that burden of all the complexity that she's dealing with today. The next thing is, and we don't have a lot of time to spend on this today, is do you have the right tools? So basically anybody out there today who hasn't digitized their supply chain, you're hurting. And the reason is because you're not making visual the data that you need to make decisions quickly. So have you implemented enough digitization so you're visualizing the data? What you don't want to do is say, we've digitized so much, we've got enough data for the next 6 years. You want to digitize the right data so you can visualize it, so you can make those changes going forward. Have you implemented continuous improvement in your supply chain department? So we always think about continuous improvement is something that they would do on the other side of that wall. But there's a lot that you can do with continuous improvement within your supply chain. And a really good example is just watching some of the employees, especially when you're doing things like inventory counts, and asking very clear questions of the employees saying, why do you keep running outside every 5 minutes? I'm going to check on this one particular thing to make sure we have enough. If we believe the data, you should not have to run outside every 5 minutes to double check to make sure that we have a thing. So looking at, these are things that are in our controls. So instead of waiting out the storm, this is a chance for us to practice best practice and get better within the business. And that's the platform that we're going to use to move the business forward. But there's no sense me talking about other creative ideas that you can use to move your business forward if we're not first doing those best practices within the business. The other thing is, and this is pretty important for your business, is that I get really, I'm not really even a supply chain guy. I'm a business development guy. And every time you manage to save $1 in supply chain, it's $2.2 to profit. So a guy like me loves hanging out in supply chain to say, listen, not only is it $2.2, it's cumulative, and it's now giving me an advantage over my competitors. Look around and you have to take a really good look at the next leadership team meeting that you have. And does Mary have a true leadership voice at the table? Are you giving Mary the authority and the respect to her insights that she deserves, that in turn your business deserves? Or conversely, hey, Mary, where's my stuff? If you treat Mary as in, where's the stuff? We just want what we want, where we want, when we want, how we want. If you're treating Mary like that, you've now set Mary up to be a machine. She's just a machine that isn't performing correctly. In a leadership position at the leadership table, you're asking Mary for insights of how to make these improvements to move forward, versus Mary going, last report is 60%, that's the past. We want the best insights out of Mary today as to how we move forward and create that value in the business. So what are your today's actionable items for best practice with Mary? One, and I'm going to show you this on the next slide, we want to fully utilize our vendor scorecards. Two, we're going to set up a process for new vendor review process, because we're going to need that. And three, I want you to sit in the meetings between Mary and the sales team. I already know from the many, many conversations that I have across North America every day, you have a gap, an attention gap between your sales team and your supply chain today. If you want to show your leadership, start sitting in some of those meetings. So it's going to not only help bridge the gap, but the other thing it's going to do is it's going to start bringing something to your ears that you need to hear. And what you're going to start listening for is, what products and services today can I harness to increase margin? And which products and services today in my business am I just getting by? Am I just surviving? I just watched a bloodbath between sales and Mary, and we only make 5% margin on this. It's not worth it. Those are going to be, it's going to show your leadership and your compassion for your team, but it's going to get some very, very valuable information back to you saying, this is where we need to go in the future if we're going to add value to this supply chain. So the vendor scorecard. Vendor scorecard is the biggest tool that you have in your toolkit today. So if you're not using a vendor scorecard, contact me after. I will send you a vendor scorecard. They can look like anything. But what they do is, it's the goal of why you're using your vendor scorecard today. What it is a way of communicating with your existing supply chain and coaching them of what best practice is, and making them aware of, these are the things that are important to us as a business. What the vendor now has the opportunity to do is go, oh, I didn't realize you cared about these things. So this is a template that you're going to use as a communication standard operating procedure, best practice that you can share with everyone. Everyone in the business should know the vendor scorecard, because whatever you put on that is what you care about going forward. So that even if you happen to lose Mary and you replace Mary with Bob, Bob is going to know what best practice is on your vendor scorecard, because it highlights all the things that are important to you and your business to being successful. So I want to pick just a couple items out of the vendor scorecard. The vendor scorecard is not meant to beat up a supplier. If you have that relationship with your supply chain today, that it's confrontational and you're going to fight, I guarantee that it's not a healthy relationship and it's not going to go forward. You need to take the you versus me out of the conversation with your supply chain, and you need to put it on that piece of paper to say it's now you and me creating and looking at best practice. So I used to do this with my supply chain, and I would share this with them and say, here's some things we're doing well. Here's some things that maybe you have some ideas of how we can make improvements on. But really good example is I would share with my suppliers, you have not come to the table in the last couple of years with new products. And they would go, I didn't know you were looking. And you're going, yes, it's on the sheet. I expect you as my partner to come back to me and say, you've been buying, Darrin, a 5519 for the last couple of years. We actually have come up with a 55110 that may be a better product based upon what we see in your business. This doesn't work all the time. There is no magic wand. What it does is it puts standard operating procedure or best practice on paper. So what you're trying to get away from is what's happening today is text messages. The text message only says one thing: your order's late. And that's not acceptable anymore. So what I'm suggesting is this documentation process is a way to be proactive with your supply chain to say, these are the things we care about, and this is a great way to impress us. But you have to realize that some of the vendors who are coming to see you today, you don't want them to guess. You literally want to say, and I hate equating this to dating, could you just tell me everything I need to care about? Wouldn't that be so much easier if we just told each other what we cared about and what success looks like and what incentivizes us? So a couple more that we have on here that I've shared before, good example that I always used to ask my suppliers is, show me your e-commerce site that I can buy parts. And you would get well, if we know that is best practice today, I can take any one of my team members, they can place the order and we can track it. It's important to us. Those are the things you want to highlight with your supply chain while you're actually teaching them what is best practice and how to do business with you. And again, we could go on this one for days, but I really want to bring to your attention that this is a way to take that tension out of the room versus they're a bunch of jerks and we just fired them. You may not be able to be in a position today to fire your supply chain because they're not performing. This is merely a tool that I'm presenting to you that you can use to build that relationship. So you have some best practice tools in your toolkit that you can use, and you're going, that's great, Darrin, we've got this much room for improvement. We're going to take care of our team. We're going to get Mary back at the table. We're going to get her insights and the support that she needs to move forward. And then this starts happening. And this is from my phone. I took a screenshot and I put it up on the screen. So sometimes just doing best practice is not even good enough. So text I receive, I've prepaid for my parts, and they've now told me that I'm no longer a priority, so I could be looking at 6 months out. Came from a manufacturer in Canada that sent that to me and then said, by the way, fix it. This is an actual email that I tried to take a screenshot to put out for you, but I had to retype it because the screenshot didn't work. We're now in a situation, and I'm not saying everything is completely magic wand fixable. It's just work. Here's an email, and basically it says is that we upfit first responder vehicles. We used to get 23 chassis a month. We're now down to 7, and Darrin, I basically had to beg for them. I found it ironic that my email account wanted for me to respond with one of those headers back to the business owner. I'm glad I did not click any of those. I got on the phone and talked to him right away and said, let's talk about what options that you have in front of you, because we both know that going from 23 to 7 is going to hurt your existing customers and your future business because they may start looking elsewhere. And then there's this. This is an actual phone call conversation that I had with a company in Ontario. They're very frustrated that their supplier has bumped them down. They feel like they're number number 12 in the priority list. And they also were going to go out and spend $10 million just to buy another manufacturing business. When I pressed them and said, how far have you looked for another partner, another supplier, their viewpoint was, we've looked within 100 miles. And that's not the world that we live in today. We are all global companies, and thinking about the opportunity that you have for your business and your supply chain within 100 miles, you're suffering just like this company is. Compounded with that, you now have all of these interesting stats that are happening. Supply chain earnings are up 400% in the last 12 months. Air transport, if you've ever had to use air transport, it's enough to make you cry for the costs it's taking. It's crazy. So what does all this mean? So you've gone back, great, Darrin. I've tried some best practice. I'm still getting dumped on. So this is a very sad fact. It's a very sad fact that you have to deal with today in your business, and you have to own it, and you have to appreciate it, and then you have to do something about it. All of this data, all of those headlines, all of those things that you're seeing in your business today of going, wow, that's a lot of, oh, I wasn't expecting, and then this happened, then I just got this. You have to realize that you're no longer a priority because someone's outbidding you. Someone else can sell to someone else for 20% more, and that capacity is being taken up. So the question is, going forward, as long as you're using best practice, how do you once again become a priority? So if we were all here today in the same room, I would feel pretty good because I'm missing humans. But if we were all here today in the same room, I would ask you a question. And the question would be, I would make sure I would put one of you on the spot and make it super uncomfortable. And I would say, where does your supply chain come from? So if we were to think about all of the suppliers in your supply chain, I would ask you a very specific question to identify all of them. And then I would ask you, how did you end up with them? How did they end up being your supplier today? And this is what I usually get. This guy here, they're locals. We knew his father, and we've been dealing with them now for probably, I think, forever. So this is definitely something that I would get back. This person here, I can't really remember her name, but she's been with us, and her company's been with us as a supplier for the last, I'd say, the last 6 years. This guy back here, he was actually, I'm pretty sure he was referred to us by another supplier, and I can't really remember what his name is. And if this is a family picture of all our suppliers today, that guy is no longer with us. But the guy behind him, who knows the old adage of get in line, stay in line, he knew to stay in line, so we got him after the fact. Oh, and then there's this guy. We found this guy on a Google search. We filled out a credit app, and they sent us what they needed. In every single circumstance that I'm sharing with you, your supply chain, I would suggest to you, happened by happenstance. They were actually not forced upon you, but they just happened to be in the room. And that is no longer acceptable if you want to take control of your supply chain going forward. And I equate this to the thought process of selling to your supply chain. What would happen if we as business owners took the same level of drive and curiosity and effort that we use to get customers today? If I asked you, how do you get new customers? You would say, we hunt, we advertise, we use the following promotions, we use the following networks. We actively go out and find new customers because we know today in our businesses, without having better customers and more customers will die. So why is it over the last 20 years, someone's been telling you the best way to go is get rid of all your suppliers and do single source? It's actually, if I was to knock on a lot of the a lot of businesses today, if I was to knock on your door and said, hey, I have a solution for you, can I do business with you today? I'm officially stonewalled at the person at the front desk. I'm actually told, please go away. Quote, no soliciting, no peddlers. We don't want you here. We've driven down our supply chain to the lowest common denominator, and that includes the relationships that we have. We've driven it down to the most efficient, least amount of relationships, and we wonder why we're suffering today. We're wondering why we're having difficulty getting creative. So, how can we start selling to our supply chain? And most of you are leaning back in your chairs going, Darrin, I don't like where this is going. I don't like it at all because we have systems set up. And I really want to equate this to another challenge that you're dealing with today. 5 years ago, we weren't having the level of conversation today that we're having about you attracting and retaining employees. Because 5 years ago, you were not an employment development agency. 5 years ago, you actually had people submitting resumes to your business, and you would go through them and say, I got 20 of them. I'm going to take 5 of them. Today, we are now desperate for talent. The exact same thing has happened to your supply chain. So I'm the one today waving the flag. If you want sales, you got to be a media company. If you want employees, you now have to become an employment agency. And if you want a supply chain, you now have to start selling to it. That's the shift that has happened, especially in the last couple of years. So why don't you want to sell to your supply chain today? Because it's icky. This is the view that we have of supply chain. Vendors come to our businesses today. It's a battle of interest. We have to fill out credit app. It's usually win-lose. I don't trust them. And it's very difficult. And where I'm at today, I would rather the devil I know than the devil I don't know. And once again, you can't afford to sit back and wait this out with your current supply chain. You need to take control of it. And again, that view of selling that is built into Mary. Mary is tired of being lied to. Mary is tired of people letting her down. So for Mary, we need to start repositioning her. We need to start repositioning Mary instead of all these supplies come in and my job is to make them go that way. We need to position Mary or staff or new Mary. You need to have that champion in your business who's the doctor, whose raison d'etre is to build trust and innovation this way back through your supply chain. Not, my job is to get the stuff here where we need, when we need, how we need it. You actually now have to evolve as a business and take that next step to become the doctor who's building trust and innovation in your supply chain. So whether it's Mary, whether you need a new champion, whether you need to elevate a champion in Mary's office, you need to start doing the following things to create value, which is extremely important. You know how to do this. This is what good salespeople do anyway. They come and they create value for the customer. Instead of going this way, we're now doing these things back through our supply chain. The other thing that I suggest you do, and extremely important, is build a meeting room. When I go to businesses today, where the business is being done, not created, where the business is being conducted is in text messages. Text messages will not build innovation and trust. It's convenient to know dates, amounts, dollar figures, but it doesn't build the trust and innovation that you're looking for. So what I suggest you do if you really want to start selling to your supply chain is you can harness technology. You can use that technology to start meeting with your suppliers one-on-one. You couldn't even use this technology 5 years ago. We didn't have Zoom. We didn't do the things that we're doing today. We would physically go to conferences. Mary can have a conversation today after Lunar, I think we're done Lunar New Year. Mary can have a conversation today anywhere in Asia from her studio, from the meeting room. And what she can do is say, how do we create together? How do we create more value? What you don't want to do is keep going to that local person who's still utilizing that supply chain all the way back to Vietnam. And all they're doing is sending you a text message. Mary has the ability today to meet with Vietnam. So anybody between Mary and Vietnam should be doing something else to add value to your supply chain. They should be warehousing, they should be kitting, they should be giving you terms that are helping your business. But Mary knows the value because she actually has the ability to go to Vietnam or to Barrie, Ontario today. She has the ability, but she has to be that person, that attitude of I'm here to build trust and innovation with you, my supply chain. How do you do it? You can do it face-to-face like we're doing today because we have the technology to do it. And arrows for technology, you know how arrows work. So the other thing that you can do is, it's not working, Darrin. It's not fast enough for us. Mary can only meet with so many people. She was in Singapore, she was in Vietnam, she was in New York, she's doing all this best practice. It's still not enough. We're still not getting enough out of our current supply chain when we're building that innovation and trust. So you have another tool in your toolkit today that I already know that you're not using, and it's the one that you're absolutely going to despise. You're going to think it's a joke, and then I'm going to hook you with something on the end of showing you how it can make you millions of dollars. So if I perked up your ears, here's how I did it. So what I would start doing from my little island, not where the supply chain is, compared to my biggest competitors out of Ohio, is I started doing videos. And I would do videos about everything. And I would show people that we're the kind of business that have the people you want to work with. And I did this consistently, especially since YouTube came out. I did this consistently and painfully. I hate doing that stuff, but I loved the results because not only customers, but suppliers from around the world started to contact us. And they would say, watch that one video you did on this one component in your product. Here's what we can do to help you. I literally presented myself as an open, approachable business, and they started contacting us saying, how do we work together to grow together? So that's me. I'm even dressed up as that one salesman that I hate. And he came with all those Tim Hortons coffees, and he tried to sweet talk that girl at the front desk, and I put the run to him. That's the view that we have of salespeople today. We don't need that. We can move on, and we're better than that in building those relationships. The other interesting thing that started happening when I was doing these videos about being an open, progressive company, not only did it get me more customers, but again, what it started doing was I started getting my staff involved. I didn't have to do it. I had to work with them until they got to the point that they were happily being involved in some of these videos. So here's a picture of me, my supply chain manager and we did a video. And that video, he was so nervous, it took us 11 hours to do. 11 hours. He hated me by the time we were done. 2 weeks later, we received a phone call from Tesla saying, seeing what you did, we wanted to contact you. How could you become our partner and help us with some of our projects? You don't know what contacts and connections you have out there. if you don't first want to put yourself out there as a business. And I'm not talking that company brochure on the internet, presenting yourselves as innovators and doctors, genuine people who will pick up the phone and want to work with someone. As a result, 6 million views on YouTube. Around the world, because we're all global companies today, around the world, over 6.2 million views on YouTube today. And suppliers started contacting us, wanting to do business with us. So instead of dealing with those, I'm locked in, there's only 6 people who could ever help me, Darrin. Instead of getting locked in with those 6 people, I now have access to 7.8 billion people who may be able to help move my business forward. So one of you just sent me a text and it reads, "Hey, Darrin, I'm not quite getting it. Selling to your supply chain. Come on, we have real emergencies to deal with today. We need data. And here you are, some business development guy telling us we need to do videos to connect with the rest of the world." Yep. And by the way, I think my wife sent me that one. What we need to focus on is, where does it start? It starts with a connection. The connection leads to perhaps collaboration, and then that collaboration leads to even more business. You just don't know enough people today to fix your supply chain. All I'm asking you is to put yourself out there to maybe know some more people. That is the action that creates the effect. So, does it work? Plastic fenders. For anyone who needs data. Plastic fenders in North America, you buy them OEM pricing for $100. Specialized axles, I was paying $6,000 for these specialized axles. Plastic fenders, I was contacted by a company out of, and wait for it, everybody's going to say China. I was contacted by a company out of England who said, "We'll send you some samples. We'd love to work with you. We'll sell them to you, landed in Canada, for $32. At $32, I was buying them by the container load, as many as I could possibly get my hands on. I did not expect to be buying plastic fenders from a company out of England, because that's not intuitive for supply chain development today. I also received a phone call from my biggest competitor out of the US. And they said, "We don't like you." And I said, "Well, I like you." And they said, "Listen, we watch all your stuff. Our staff watches all your stuff. That's why we hate you. They talk about you in our leadership meetings. You figured out how to do something in one of your videos." And I went, "Yep." "And you showed people how to do it." "Yep." "Could you do it for us?" And I went, "Yep." So we helped out our biggest competitor because they watched one of the videos. In exchange, the biggest competitor said to me, "What do you want in exchange?" And I went, "I want your price for axles." One phone call, the price of that one item went down by that much on the screen, from paying $6,000 to $3,200 in one phone call, because I used that video to make a connection to somebody I did not have before. In the first year, Plastic Fenders put, just for me, $142,000 on my bottom line. What it did for my axles was an automatic $600,000 in the first year, not including the cumulative effect. So as a business development guy, I turned around to the big supplier in the US and said, "You want some plastic fenders?" And they went, "How much?" And I went, "How about $84? And they said, "That's a great deal." And when the pandemic hit, I was actually allowed to use their warehouse, and I could reach in and grab some of their axles as we went forward. So I was using those relationships we were building to future-proof my supply chain, not only profitably, but I was using it to future-proof the business as well. So in sum, what I'd like you to think about today is, how do we support the supply chain team? Because nothing else I told you today would matter if they don't feel like they're genuinely supported. And then you're going to use that to kickstart best practice within the team. Because if you fire all your supply chain today and you're not using best practice and hire a bunch of people tomorrow, you're still implementing your not best practice. So the other thing is, and the last thing on the list is start selling to your supply chain today, because again, this is where the industry is going, and I want you and your business to be a priority going forward. It's just not what we've been told to do for the last 20 years. We now have to make that adaptation if we're going to succeed going forward. There, that's enough. How did I do?
Wow, it was great. And, we're getting some super feedback on our LinkedIn channels and some people coming in. Dawn wanted me to share to you that she 100% agrees with everything that you've talked about, that, this information that you're sharing right now is critical. And the other comment is coming in from Brian. Treating suppliers with respect and paying them promptly has always led to that best practice, that stream of supply in very, very tough times. It is always about not B2B, not B2C, but H to H, human to human interaction. And I think you've really nailed that there. People are really seeing the value of newest products, helping train people. It's what can you give me? And what can I give you back? Because immediately people, if you give them something, you starting that desire to, I want to help you. Thanks, Darrin.
Thank you. Can I get one more slide?
Yeah.
Put that on.
Darrin, we also want to see a little bit about this, these videos too. I think that you need to share that.
Perfect. So just for everyone today, I actually sold my manufacturing business last Christmas. Much larger company came along, said, we love your model, we love your margins, and we don't need you. And I went, okay, I don't know if that's a compliment or an insult. I'll take it as a compliment. So what I did is I know what it's like to feel alone. I know what it's like to get the odd punch in the nose. Tech has been so helpful for me to realize that, no, you're not alone. But guess what? Still on Sunday mornings, I would be at my factory going, what am I going to do tomorrow morning? So what I've done is we built a platform for manufacturers specifically. And I've gone out and recruited over 100 experts in manufacturing from around the world. And what I've asked them to do is, could you give me a 5-minute video on what best practice looks like? So a really good example, Hugo used to be a supply chain manager for CAT. He gives videos on actually how to do those vendor scorecards. Andy Erickson used to be a plant manager for Boeing, talking about when you go from, on the factory floor to becoming a team lead, what does success look like? And Kim Wolf, who just an awesome human being. How do you set up a world-class maintenance program in your factory? I never went to school to become a manufacturing business, and I never knew where the best resource to go for that was. So we built a platform called Manufacturing Masters, www.manufacturing-masters.com. And what it is a subscription platform where manufacturers can go to help train themselves, to help train their staff on learning from the world's best manufacturing experts on what best practice looks like. And the best part is we coach them all to put it in a quick 5-minute video. So if you want to learn how to do proper inventory counts, there's a video for that. If you want to know what the CFO should be doing in the manufacturing business every day, there's a video for that. So all of that aspect of running a manufacturing business today, it's a continually building library for manufacturers to access to help them in their manufacturing business. And we're over 500 videos today, and experts from all over the world, from South Africa, India, Australia, and of course, many from North America as well.
I love it. I mean, what you've created is a learning management system, an LMS, and combined it and made it into a YouTube.
Thanks.
You've married two really, really critical aspects, and you've made it open architecture for everyone to learn. and probably grow and springboard off of that. I'm sure you're getting people that want to actually contribute and say, hey, I've got a better way of doing that. Is that happening?
Well, I would probably get a request today from experts saying, I think I have a different area I can contribute in, which is awesome. So we now have somebody filming on, if you're taking the IoT first steps, here's how to start with your first $300 sensor. We've also filmed someone who's talking about getting more women into manufacturing, but it's not about the theory. It's about very tactical things you can do today to increase the presence and the results that you're getting from women in manufacturing. Not just saying we need more women in manufacturing. It's tangible things you can do today to increase the support you're giving to women in manufacturing, but also attracting more women to your business today. So lots of different things that we have coming in. And again, as a manufacturer, we're pretty pragmatic. We think in bullet points. So if somebody can give you those bullet points within 5 minutes and just show you what success looks like, I'm pretty proud of that.
That is amazing and absolutely correct. I mean, you want to be able to make it concise, to make it digestible and actionable very, very quickly. I mean, that's the turnaround, right? I do want to say to everybody that's online and watching is that this has been recorded. It's going to be on our TEC Canada website within a couple of days. It'll also be on our YouTube website. We're putting together a little bit of what Darrin's been doing too, is that we have an archive of over 100 webinars, just like this one, that you can access experts like Darrin and find out what's innovative, what's new, and get into some of those, quote, deeper insights. So thank you very much, Darrin, for joining us today. Darrin's information is up there. I heard him say you can reach out to him, so please do. Darrin, I hope your phone blows up in the next couple of days.
Again, send me an email, send me anything through social media. If you're looking for copies of the vendor scorecard or how to get to manufacturing masters, I'll share everything, because I have a big spot in here for the leaders that are out there that are trying to make a difference today. I've walked that walk for 23 years. So for people who are making a difference today, I have all the time in the world for you, and hats off for doing what you do, and hats off for making that difference today, especially in challenging times. It's your chance to step up, and you're doing a great job.
We had just had a quick question that came in just now, and I wonder if you have a moment to answer it. It's Arnaban has said, with suppliers, if we maintain a big one and we get a big scale benefit from them, higher volume, lower cost. If we build suppliers, we get reliability, but at a higher cost. How do you balance those two things?
I always like putting many eggs in many baskets. Good example for me, we used to set up franchising agreements with other manufacturers all over the world. Those big contracts, I'm very leery of them. And that's just my first, I'd like to know more, so send me something after. But setting up those big contracts scare me because I do not like to be tied to just one big contract. It's a chance to potentially get squished. And it lulls your business into sometimes a false sense of security with your teams, because they think, hey, it's been a year, everything's going okay. You want your teams to be a little on edge so that the team is still growing and progressing as well. So I've had some very, very big contracts over the years, and I'm always very sensitive that I put a team around those big contracts to isolate it, but I also have a team that's working on the future and the other eggs in the basket, so to speak.
Great answer.
I love margin. Anything I do will be about margin.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. And thank you again, Darrin, and all the best to everyone.